Good day, engineers. I hope you are fine and you are safe from getting infected with COVID-19. It's bad. It's bad. Very, very, very bad. So I hope you are fine, you are safe, you sanitize, you keep your social distance. So stay indoors. It's for your own safety. Stay indoors. Don't go out if there's no need of you going out. So before we can begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Chabalala Kismat. As you know, I'm your facilitator. I hope my microphone, you can hear me. I hope you can see and hear me. Before we begin, engineers, a reminder, please have your pen and your paper ready before we can begin. And please be in a silent room to avoid distraction. So be away from, I know schools are closed, the babies are around. Please be on your space so that you can concentrate and avoid distraction. And engineers, if you have any question, don't hesitate. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. You can send questions on our WhatsApp group chat, and I'll attend to them on our next session that I'll be recording today. After this one, I'll make sure I cover all the questions that you have. Without wasting any time, engineers, today we find our scripture in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17. It says, now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Engineers, you can read this on your own time and try to interpret it on your own. So let's not waste time and try to make video to be shorter. Now I hope you have your own learner's guide. Please, on your learner's guide, today we're going to focus on unit standard 258921. And after this session, I will share this presentation with you to go through it. And please, I'm begging you, engineers, study on your own time. And I told you before, and I'll always tell you that if you don't understand the statement, it's highly impossible for you to understand what the question is. So please study, do research. Don't just sit at home, just study and do your research. On this unit standards, engineers, we're going to talk about install, join, and terminate low voltage cables and conductors. If you remember well, on our last session, we did talk about low voltage conductors. We spoke about low voltage conductors, and we spoke about medium voltage conductors. Engineers, if you remember well, while we are talking about it, we said low voltage conductors are electrical network foundation upon which digital technology and communication functions, if you still remember. Meaning when we did an example, we were talking about USB cables, chargers, phone charger. Yeah, we did example about the phone charger. Then when we talk about medium voltage conductors, we did talk about the main feeders, distribution and the branch circuit in industrial and commercial electrical utility installation. If you forgot about this, please try to recap to remind yourself about what we did, because it's important to understand those going forward, because without understanding them, you are in a big problem. So engineers, without wasting any time, let's talk about the outcomes of this unit standard. After we completed this unit standard, the person credited with this unit standard will understand and be capable of planning, installing and joining, also including installing couplers and sockets, and terminating on a client plates. Secondly, installing low voltage electrical cables and conductors according to statutory requirements to distribute and control electricity to electrical apparatus. So engineers, we did talk about wires. We did talk about wires. Before we can begin with session 1, please let's do a recap about what we spoke about on our last session. On our last session, we did talk about wires. We did examples about wires. And we said on our last session that wire is a metal turnout into a form of a thin, flexible thread of cord. If we can remember well, engineers, I did give you 3 examples of wires or cables. We spoke about communication cable, and we spoke about single conductors, and we spoke about flexible cables. Engineers, if you remember well, we said communication cables are wires that are used only for communications. Then we did an example of your earphones or speakers, audio speakers. Yeah, we spoke about those. Then on single conductors, we did explain what is a single conductors. We did tell you that single conductors are single insulated conductor for a residential wiring. Then we did again spoke about flexible cables, whereby we said flexible cables are types of electrical cables that can stand continually bending in a moving application. Whereby we spoke about our phone chargers, and we spoke about our laptop chargers, that even if they can bend, but they can still transmit electricity. Engineers, we did say that wires are, as we define here, are used for transmission of electricity or electrical signals. Wire can come in many forms and are made from many materials. They may seem simple, but you as an engineer, my friend, you need to be aware of these 2 important points. And remember, engineers, we always spoke about this. Electricity in a long wires used in transmission behave very differently than in a short wires used in a design of devices. And we did say that the use of wires in AC circuits brings all sorts of problems like skin effect. Engineers, if you remember well, we even did the research about the AC and DC circuits. So if you forgot about them, please make sure that you take time to read them and remind yourself, recap on those, because from now on, you need to know them by heart. Engineers, we also spoke about AC power. In AC power, we said current like to travel near the surface of a wire, skin effect. In AC power, electrons like to flow on the outside of a wire. Remember, engineers, that we said electrons move from one shell to another. Keep that in mind. This is because the changing of the current back and forth causes eddy currents that result in current counting towards the surface. Remember, engineers, we did talk about eddy currents, and we said eddy currents are loops of electrical current induced within conductors by changing magnetic field in conductor according to Faraday's law of induction. And we did talk about Faraday's law too, engineers. If you forgot about those, please make yourself favor to recap on those. And we did speak about DC power. In DC power, current travels through the whole of a wire. Remember, if you by now you are supposed to know the difference between AC and DC. Please, engineer, have time to study more. Have time to study more. Without wasting time, on our session 1, let's talk about fire stopping. On your learner's guide, it says sealing around penetration to maintain the integrity of fire, resistant rated construction. Hey, what is fire stopping? A fire stopping is the method and the material used to close off opening in a fireproof walls and floors. Ne? The best way we can define the fire stopping as the sealing of any opening to prevent fire, including smoke and heat, from passing through multiple components. So building must ensure that any opening and gaps are fire stopped to restrict both lateral and vertical fire spread. So it is important for fire stopping engineers. It is important. So moving forward, let's talk about installation in a main hole. So we can go more further. Let's try to understand the word manhole, or try to understand what is a manhole. A manhole is an opening to a confined space, such as shaft, a utility vault, and a large vessel. Most often, the manholes are used as an access point for an underground public utility, allowing inspection and maintenance and system upgrades. Most of the time we use manholes for waters, telephone, electricity, storm drains, and district heating. So even on a train, there is a manhole. Train cables are around the manhole walls, but do not bend to a radius less than 6 times the overall cable diameter. So before you can understand the part of installation, I told you, my friend, you need to understand the statement. You need to understand every word. You need to understand what is a manhole. So without knowing what is a manhole, you won't be able to understand what we are talking about. So make time to make your research and try to study, engineers. So without wasting any time, let's go straight to the installation of a manhole. So that engineers are meant to say installation in manhole. Step number 1, install a proofing on a low voltage conductors, where the low voltage conductors are installed in the same manhole with medium voltage conductors, like we explained on our last session. And now we did a recap about the low voltage conductors and medium voltage conductors. I hope now you know them. What is the difference between low voltage conductors and medium voltage conductors? Second step, use fireproofing tape as specified in section 26. Medium voltage cables and apply the tape in a single layer. The tape with the coated side towards the cable and extend it not less than 1 inch into each duct. Secure the fireproofing tape in a place by a random pair of a glass cloth tape. I hope you follow, engineers. If there's where you don't understand, please don't hesitate to send questions so that I explain that better to you. Moving forward, engineers, let's focus now on a splice and termination installation. When you talk about, we're talking about splice, don't confuse, it's not spice, it's splice. So when you talk about splice, you have to, like I said, you have to understand what the word means first before you can go to installation or termination. So first you need to make your research, what is a splice is. When we talk about splice, we're talking about two hooks or two parts of a hook by interviewing by the strands. Meaning we're talking about securing two parts together, securing together two ends parts. That's what when we talk about splice. Splice and termination shall be mechanically and electrically secure and tightened to manufacture, publish, tag value using a tag cube, screwdriver, or a wrench. Where the government determines that unsatisfactory splice or termination have been installed, replace the splice of terminations at no additional cost to the government. I don't know you understand. Where the government determines that unsatisfactory splice or termination has been installed, replace the splice and termination at no additional costs to the government. Like we explained, splice, it's a whole. I don't know how can I explain this to you. It's difficult now to explain to you because you're far. But what I can say, please make a research about splice. But it's taking securing together two ends of a whole. So make sure you do your own research on that. So for now, please take 15 minutes to write these formatives. And please, after writing these formatives, write them and take a picture and send it back to me before the end of today. If you fail to submit, I'll mark you absent. So make sure that you do submit your formatives. So write the questions down quickly. Engineers, I think you wrote the questions. Please write the questions and submit them at the end of the session. Now let's talk about control wiring installation. Unless otherwise specified in other section, install control wiring and connect to equipment to perform the required function as specified or shown on the drawing. Install the separate power supply circuit for each system, except where otherwise shown on the drawing. It says, unless otherwise specified in other section. Listen the statement. Install control wiring and connect to equipment to perform the required function as specified or as shown on the drawings. Install separate power supply cycle for each system, except where otherwise shown on the drawing. So point number A, install a permanent wire marker on each wire at each termination. Engineers, you have to understand the weight by statement, weight by weight. When we talk about termination, what comes in your mind when you talk about termination? To terminate something, look at that, my went off. Yes, when we are talking about termination is to end, is to end something. Let's make an example whereby you are working somewhere, then the employer decides to terminate contract, meaning they are ending your contract. And then here in electrical engineering, we also have ways, there are different ways to terminate cables. So please do make research about those. Point number B, identifying numbers and letters on the wire marker shall correspond to those on the wiring diagram used for installing the system. When you talk about the drawings or wiring diagrams, you are talking about manuals. So you need to make sure that you have to make sure that identifying numbers and letters on the wire marker shall correspond to those on the wiring diagram. So you need to make sure of that. Point number C, wire marker shall retain their marking after cleaning. Wire markers shall retain their marking after cleaning, meaning you don't use normal markers that we use in class, whiteboard markers. You need to use permanent markers, and there are specification of markers, which one to use. Moving to point number D, in each manhole and handhole, install embossed brass tags to identify the system served and function. In each manhole, I hope now you know what manhole and handhole is. I hope you do follow. Because in the beginning of the session, I did explain that to you. So make sure you rewatch the video and you study on your own time. Moving to acceptance, check and test. Perform in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendation, in addition, including the following: visual inspection and test. Inspect physical condition. Remember on our last unit standard, we did speak and talk about inspection, types of inspection. So do yourself a favor, my friend, and go and read read the last and read the last unit standard. Point number 2, electrical test. After installation, but before connection to utilization devices, such as fixtures, motors, or appliances, test conductors face-to-face and face-to-ground resistance with an insulation resistance tester. Remember on our last session, we did give an example of insulation resistance tester. We said it is megometer. Let me write it for you. Megometer. We use megometer. Megometer. A megometer, it is used to measure ohmic value on the insulator under a direct voltage. Remember we did the research about Ohm's law. Please go back to your research and read your research and try to recap on your own time. Please do yourself a favor. Point number B, apply voltage shall be 500 DC for 300 V rated cables and 100 V DC for 600 voltage rated cables. Apply test for 1 minute or until let me do this first. Until let me start afresh. Applied voltage shall be 500 volt DC for 300 volt rated cables and 100 V DC for 600 volt rated cables. Apply test for 1 minute or until reading is constant for 15 seconds. Whichever is longer, minimum insulation resistance value shall not be less than 25 mega ohms. 300 volt rated cables and 100 mega ohms for 600 V rated cables. Remember, on low voltage conductors, they cannot be more than 2,400 volts. They cannot be more than 2,400 volts. Those are low voltage conductors, whereby we call them whereby we said low voltage conductors, we refer them as electrical network foundation, upon which technology, digital technology and communication functions. We're talking about USB cables, we're talking about USAIDs. They cannot pass more than 2,400 voltage. Then we have the medium voltage conductors that are more than that. I hope you do understand what I said. And please do write this formative activity too. It goes with that one I gave first and this one. I need this today. By end of today, you must submit these activities. And please, if you have questions or you don't understand, please ask questions. Now it's difficult because we are doing virtually, but you don't have a choice. It's for your own safety and for our own safety too. So be safe and please do these formatives. Then I'll send the supporting videos of installation in main homes. I'll give a supporting video on that one. And thank you for joining today's class. If you have questions, like I said, please do send questions on our group chat. Do send questions, then I'll attend them on the next session. And I will send our next session video at 6 o'clock, like I promised. So please do read this one and ask questions, answer those questions, formative questions I gave you. Yeah. So be safe, take care.